Okay, first question, who knows Harp? So I can pretty much talk what I want, it's great. So basically I was searching just for some kind of static site generator for my private blog, and my only requirement was ease of use. I just wanted to get up and running in no time, that's it. And there's so much out there which are pretty damn complex that I finally settled with one of the few ones that use Node. Yeah, by day I work at Elasticsearch. I'm a Java guy, so I hunt for stack traces in distributed systems, which is great fun. I don't have a clue about web design. My skills in web design is choosing a Twitter Bootstrap theme, and that's it. I like tech meetups. This is the first one this week. If you like search, go to this one. I'm interested in developer camp in Munich. This means I want to do a bar camp just for developers. I'm currently searching for a location for 150 people for a whole weekend. If you know anyone who can offer such a location, with one big room for those people and 5 smaller conference rooms for sessions, drop me a note, because I'm really willing and organizing one in the beginning of next year or middle of next year. But let's get back to Harp. Let's start with the introduction. Who of you is using static site generators for anything? Okay, who's happy with a static site generator for anything? Okay, let's call it a third. So there's a great site. There's a great site called Static Site Generators.net, and it lists 388 static site generators. So you totally should write your own one, right? I think there are a couple of poster sites out there. There's Jekyll, which was used all over the place back in the days in Octopress. I use Jekyll a lot because we used to generate the whole Elasticsearch documentation in textile using Jekyll and hosting it statically, but yeah, using textile is kind of out of date, I guess. So I searched for a new one for my kind of private blog just for fun, and I just wanted a small tool with no extra functionality. Yeah, static site generators have a couple of use cases. It's great for prototyping. I think it's great for writing documentation for technology or any technology projects or something like that. You can totally use it for small websites, kind of a business card website or whatever, and you can use it for blogs. That's what I was searching for. And I think you can potentially replace 90% of kind of misused small-scale CMSs out there, where people just have 5 pages in WordPress, Drupal, or whatever, and get hacked every 3 minutes because they don't maintain them. I think this is a huge use case, and all of those big companies like Jimdo or 1&1, they're just doing this approach in some kind of other scale, so why not do it yourself? So yeah, I found Harp, and Harp is basically doing exactly that. It's a static web server with built-in preprocessing. So you write EJS, JIT, or Markdown, and it produces HTML. Same for less stylus Sus, and same for CoffeeScript. So it's that with a couple of more features. And it's sufficient to have a blog, right? Installation, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You can call npm install Harp. You initialize a new project, and you call HarpWebServer my project, and you can start editing files if you go in the browser. That's it. And that was the kind of thing I was searching for. Like no huge setup, no gem install, and wait an hour until it is finished. It's really quick. Let's talk about a couple of more features here before I give a demo in a second. Except for Harp init and HarpWebServer, those are the other 2 command line options you have. So you have Harp compile and can create HTML, CSS, and JavaScript out of your files and put it on some Nginx or for static web hosting. And you have Harp multi-host, which basically allows you to just host several projects with one Harp instance, and that's it. There's no fancy options. Because everyone is at DockerCon right now, I can make my fun that I need to mention Docker in some talk, or Rocket, otherwise the talk isn't cool anymore. I've done that. It's great for static applications, because you can just put them in a container and image and you're done. Another nice feature is partials. I think if you did websites 10 to 15 years ago, you would know what a server-side includes with Apache. So partials is basically just including something at any point on your site. The other component Harp has is basically something called a layout. So you define for your directory structure a layout, and every other file inside of that directory will just reuse this layout with headers and footers or whatever. I will show an example in a second. You can define metadata, which is nice if you use something like Jade or EJS, because you have a JSON file called _data.json, and you can put a certain kind of rendering context in there, and you can access it as part of the variables in the templating language, which is also really neat, because you don't have to change the template when you want to change some content. Again, we'll see an example. You can integrate HarpJS with, or Harp with express.js if you want. So you basically just need a static directory for your Express applications and put a harp.mount on top of that, and Harp will care to just compile all of your assets, if it's Markdown or CSS. Another thing are boilerplates. So instead of starting with an empty Harp, you can just refer to some GitHub repository, and the GitHub repository is going to be cloned, and you can start with that as a starting point for prototyping or whatever. One nice thing is the environment. You have two different environments in Harp. One is production, one is development. And the most important part is the different caching strategy. So if you use development, whenever you hit a resource, it's being generated on the fly. So it's basically live. When you put it into production, it's put into an LRU cache, and it's delivered from the cache, so you don't have to recreate the site all the times. I don't think the LRU thing is a good idea if you don't use something like express.js, because the best cache you have is pretty obvious the file system cache. So just compile your stuff and let it be served by the file system with an Nginx. And the other nice part is you can check in which part of environment you actually are. And in my blog, I use it to basically display drafts, which I have not yet finished, of blog posts, to be shown in the development mode, but not in the production mode. Here, deployment, it's static HTML, so there is no deployment, you just put it somewhere. There's some documentation for this kind of stuff. The developers of Harp basically have their own platform. I think it's somehow integrated with Dropbox. I don't know why you would need that. Potentially there is need. There are a couple of smaller features which are pretty nice. There's a global JSON file where you can just set some variables which count for all of your templates. There's a current object for application state. Application state is kind of a hard word for a static site generator. So it basically allows you, for example, to check at which URL you are, and basically sort of highlight the current URL in the menu or stuff like that. So it's not really a state, in my opinion. You can easily add basic R support. You can have a custom 404 page, stuff like that. There are a couple of recipes on harpjs.com. For example, creating an atom feed out using Jade or something like that for your blog. What is missing, in my opinion, and that's a big problem, is there's no support for browser sync or live reload, which I would kind of expect for a tool of today. There's a pull request for browser sync, but the Harp people say that they want to deeply integrate it into Harp, and they will not accept this pull request. So we have to maybe wait a bit for that. And the underlying rendering library, which basically renders from one format into HTML or CSS, is kind of limited. There are I think 40 open pull requests for all kinds of templating languages. Nothing gets accepted. I wrote one for ASCII-doc, because if I write technical documentation, it's ASCII-doc. I think they will have to change the library that you can sort of register your own rendering mechanisms in your application, and that's still missing. And there's really not a lot of progress. And yeah, the big picture is that you basically can build something like the Jimdo thing or the 1.1 homepage generator, and have one Express application to kind of configure your pages and edit them, and have some sort of deploy button and put it into production. And this is the first try, but unfortunately it doesn't work with the current version of Harp. It's kind of outdated, but it has some pretty nice ideas for that. Okay, so while I sit down and relax, do you have questions? Great, no questions. I think you can all read this. Come on. You should have brought your monocle. Try harder. Can you read that? Okay. So we can totally do Harp or create a directory. Harp, cd into it. We can now just do Harp init my project. And it's using the default boilerplate one. We can now just call HarpServer my project, type it correctly. So now you have the service up and running in port 9000. Damn. Would you excuse me for 10 minutes? I have to increase the font. And I have to learn to type. It's not big either. So yeah, you get the principle. It kind of works. If we take a look into this my project, we can see there are a couple of files, like the custom 404 file. I can move the Jade file to Markdown, edit the Markdown like it was before, add some new content, and you can see it pretty much works, and that's all you need to do, and that's what I like about Harp. There's nothing hidden, there's no hidden complexity, it just works and does what I want. I can change stuff. Yeah, what else can I do? I can totally increase the font. Can do that all night long. I can use boilerplates, like add a slideshow project and just specify a boilerplate. Wait a bit and have some sort of a pre-configured project here. And we can stop Harp and call Harp multi-host to host the other option which is left. And when we just reload this page, you can basically switch between the different projects, which is nice if you have like some sort of customer demo site or something like that. Yeah, this is just a slide deck template. The other nice part is the compilation, because it's that simple. If we go in the slideshow project, all you have to do is hard compile. And if you don't check dump core files, because I do a lot of Java, you can see that everything here is, it's not fun. So you can see that everything has been compiled here, and everything's HTML and minified and stuff like that. And if we serve this locally, and check out port 8000, it's exactly the same. So you have to believe me, I typed port 8000, not 9000 at the URL bar. So it's just a compiled version, which you then could throw into a Docker image, right? So the last feature, or which is really nice to add, is if you have an _harp JSON file, you could like add basic auth here. It's just adding a single directive, user pass. And if we go back to MNUG and we switch to my project, we are queried for user and pass. So if you have a multi-host project, it makes a lot of sense if you had different customers or something like that. I could potentially, if you want to see more, like how I implemented a couple of things in my blog. So my blog is absolutely boring, and I don't update it every 6 months at least. But a couple of concepts might be interesting. So the nice part about it is that I have a data JSON file, which basically contains, for example, a reference to my feed, which is the atom feed, and that one should not have the default layout, because it should just render the XML but not the HTML in the default template. So there's an _layout Jade, which basically contains all of my HTML code. And the interesting part is that you can have layout.jade, but you could then have arbitrary stuff as a markdown file. So both are combined, and this is what makes it interesting. Let me stop this one and start HarpServer here. And yeah, the website itself is completely boring. You see, I just took some arbitrary Twitter Bootstrap theme. This one is a non-released blog post, so it's marked as red. We can basically just check out how it works. So there's an index Jade, and I can just check if the blog post is published or not, and or the environment is development. And if it's development, I just display all of my blog posts. And each of my blog posts, which is in the posts directory, and there's an _data.json file which contains meta information, and I can just tag it as published false in there. So depending on this variable, blog posts are released or not. And the other interesting part is I kind of configure the Twitter bootstrap width here, because those are blog posts with images, so it needs to be wider. And those are the kind of things you can change here depending on your Jade templates. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Nothing special, nothing hidden. The HarpJSON file contains some global information. So basically, the color of the tags is just Twitter bootstrap colors for like warning or information labels, so I can change them. And yeah, all I wanted was a small block engine, and that's what it does, and it's really good at that. It won't help you if you have like Yeoman generators, but it works for prototyping.